Do you want a stronger, more connected marriage without having to schedule appointments, pay a hefty fee, or find a babysitter? Connected and Committed is a 6-week self study course designed to help you break unhealthy cycles, communicate with clarity, rebuild trust, and reignite intimacy on your own. Each week, you will dive into 3 powerful recorded coaching sessions, practical exercises, and expert backed strategies that create lasting change. Whether you're feeling disconnected or just want to deepen your bond, this course is going to guide you every single step of the way. Purchase grants you lifetime access and can be done with your spouse or on your own. Invest in your marriage today. Visit the link in the show notes to learn more.
Marriage isn't supposed to feel like roommates, but it doesn't have to feel like a war either. Hi, I'm Cameron Alaricky, certified marriage coach and a relationship expert. Every week on Married and Connected, I bring you real talk, hard truths, and practical tools you can start using right away. Whether you've been married 2 years or 42, this is where you'll find hope, encouragement, and steps that actually work. So let's make your marriage feel good again, starting right now. Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of the Married and Connected podcast. I am your host, Cameron Alaricky. This week, we are going to be talking about what to do when you feel like you are giving more than you're getting, and not in a petty way, but in an exhausted way. In a, I love you, but I am carrying the weight of the world and it feels like more than you kind of way. I read a story earlier this week on Facebook. Basically, the Cliff Notes version of it is that this wife is the head chef at a cafe and they're busy, and she texts the husband in the middle of the day and says, "Hey, can you give the dog a pill?" And if the dog doesn't get the pill at a certain time, his lungs fill up with fluid and basically he suffocates on his own bodily fluids. So she texts the husband, says, "Yes, can you do this?" He says, "Yes, I can, no problem." 30 minutes before the dog is supposed to get the pill, she sends him a text, "Hey, I need you to do this." She gets home like 3-4 hours later, can't find the dog. Dog is laying on the laundry room floor, almost dead, because he'd been suffocating. And so she takes the dog in, they get him, he survives, everything's fine. She comes home, and rightfully so, she's pissed. And she looks at the husband, and the husband says, and this is the key that I want to hone in on, okay? The husband says, "It's not that big of a deal. Why didn't you just text me again to make sure that I'd done it? The game went into overtime. I didn't think it was that big of a deal." And she looks at him and says, "I'm not your mother. I'm not your mother. I carry the mental load for our children. I carry the mental load for this house. I carry the mental load for the dog. I did text you. I did trust you to do what I asked you to do, and you didn't do it." And so she left. And that was it. They ended up getting a divorce, all the things. And this is why I want to do this episode this week, because this is something that I hear so frequently when I am coaching couples is, "I did text you. I have asked you." Or the husband will say, and this is not to throw guys under the bus, but I think it's mostly guys that need some help here to understand why their wife is so volcanically mad about this. And the reason is because we ask for help. "Hey, can you help around the house?" And what we get back is, "Yeah, make me a list." No, I'm not your mother. Like I need, and I think that's what women are mostly thinking these days is, "I'm not your mother. I need a partner." What does partnership look like? It's not me making you a list. It's you looking around and seeing what needs done. It's you knowing that the kids haven't had a pediatric visit in a while, knowing that the kids need a dentist appointment, knowing that you need a dentist appointment and actually setting it yourself, knowing, what the chiropractor's name is, knowing that the dog gets a pill at 8:00 on the dot and the reasons that the dog gets a pill at 8:00 on the dot. And then helping me out with that. So all of that being said, I mean, we don't need to sit here for 20 minutes and me tell you how exhausted you are. You know how exhausted you are. And you know what it feels like to do bedtime alone again. And here's the thing too, is that this episode is not just for people who feel like they're carrying the weight of the world because their spouse is neglectful or lazy or not capable of doing it. It's also for those of us, because I coach a lot of aviation couples where the husband is a pilot, and the wife is either working full time or a stay at home mom. And this applies there too. And it's not meant to be like a bashing thing, but it is a very heavy feeling, and one that's very common of like, yeah, I get it that it's circumstantial, but it's still happening. It still sucks to manage the meals and the appointments and the laundry and the logistics, for all of our communication to only be logistical or teamwork conversations, for me to carry the emotional weight for every single person in this house, or to be working nonstop, and in a lot of cases, throwing in a full-time job on top of all of that. And again, I've said this a couple of times, because I don't want this to be a bashing session, I also want to look at the flip side to this. The one to be the one that's on the road, the pilot, the, truck driver, the first responder, to be the one working nonstop, traveling constantly, physically depleted, and feeling like nothing you do even matters or counts. I don't want you rehashing the pain, because I feel like this is what's happening with couples, is that you just continue to rehash these cycles over and over and over again. And what's lacking is an understanding of why this dynamic happens, why it feels so deeply personal, and how to actually shift it without destroying your marriage in the process. Because the truth is that most couples who feel this way aren't dealing with selfishness. It seems like selfishness, but I don't think it is. I think it's a structural imbalance and unspoken expectations and a nervous system depletion that we're not looking at. And when these three things collide, resentment just feels hopeless and overwhelming and inevitable. So I want to break this down today. When one partner is traveling for work, pilot schedules, consulting, oil fields, military, whatever it is, you're not living with the same rhythm, especially as the friends that you have that you go to dinner with, or that you're with the PTA with, or the other baseball moms, or what have you. One person lives it in intensity and these bursts. The other person lives in constancy and repetition. Psychologically, this repetition is not only more draining, it's also draining faster than little bursts of stress. Why? Because novelty stimulates dopamine. Repetition drains dopamine. So the spouse who's gone may be genuinely exhausted, not discounting that at all. Long flights, commuting, meetings, pressure, but they're also experiencing change of scenery, adult conversation, mental stimulation, the adrenaline rush of going to the job and doing what you love and then coming home. This spouse at home experiences relentless sameness. Same dishes, same bedtime routine, same school drop-offs, same time in the car line every day, same emotional regulation of the kids. And that kind of load depletes executive functioning. It shrinks your patience. It reduces the capacity for empathy. And here is the part that no one talks about. I don't think anybody talks about anything that I just said either. But when your brain is depleted, you are hardwired as a human being to look for negativity. But now, when your brain is depleted, you're also hardwired to look for somebody to blame for that. And that's emotional insobriety, which is a whole nother podcast for a whole nother day. I talk about it all the time. But your brain wants a reason. So your brain lands on, they're the problem. They're the villain in my story because they get to leave. They don't understand what I do. They have it easier. Not because that's necessarily true, but because their nervous system is desperately looking for calm and for something to grasp onto to say, you're validated. You're validated in what you feel. You're validated in what you're thinking. Now, flip that scenario when a spouse is sick, pregnant, depressed, or dealing with chronic limitations. This one's even more complicated because now the imbalance isn't logistical, it's existential. You didn't sign up to do this alone. You did, however, sign up for better or for worse and through sickness and health. You love this person, so you feel guilt for feeling overwhelmed, resentment for feeling alone, and it's happening at the same time. That emotional contradiction is exhausting because you're living in basically two different worlds. I shouldn't feel shame, but I do. I shouldn't feel resentment, but I do. I shouldn't feel anger, but I do. And if it goes unprocessed, that's where it starts to turn into quiet detachment. You start to pull away from your spouse. You stop sharing how tired you are because you're afraid to say, I'm tired, when they are growing a human or going through chemo treatments, or they are barely able to function every day, sometimes not even able to get out of bed because of their depression. So you feel guilty talking about yourself when you see visibly that they're struggling even more. They stop asking because they feel like a burden. And now intimacy is slowly eroding, not for a lack of love, but because of unaddressed grief. You're grieving the version of the marriage that you expected while living something that was absolutely not on your bingo card. And that grief has to be acknowledged or it's going to come out sideways. And here's the real root, the deeper truth. The pain of I'm giving more is rarely about chores. It's going to come out like chores. But as I tell my clients all the time, the problem is deeper than the problem. It's this perceived inequity in emotional investment. Research on equity theory in relationships shows that people don't need perfect equality, but they do need perceived fairness. And this is where we're getting mixed up because we're actually thinking that fairness is equal. If you get A, I'm going to get B. If you do X, I will do Y. If I do Z, you're going to do A. And what we're missing in that, and this starts when we're like 4 years old and we're saying, it's not fair. It's not fair that they get more recess time. It's not fair that they get to play with the blocks and I don't. It's not fair that they get to paint longer than I do. Here's how it translates into adulthood. We think that fairness is equal. Fairness is actually emotional. If I feel seen, appreciated, prioritized, I can carry more for a season. But here's how this actually ends up looking, okay? Fairness, and this is what I teach my kids, it's also what I taught my students when I was a teacher. Fairness is what you need in order to be successful. The thing about a marriage, though, is it's not about you. It's about you and your partner as a team. So what does the marriage need to be successful? That's what's fair. For a season, you may have to take on more of the load. Here's where it gets to be tricky. When you're promised a different life, when you're promised, well, okay, babe, just hang on until I can get out of training. Just hang on until I can get out of chemo. Just hang on until when I'm not pregnant anymore, then we'll have this brand new baby and we'll be able to look at this baby and know what this is for. Okay, I understand that, we're in the thick of it because we've got 3 under 5 and it's just a season. These seasons may be years long, sometimes even decades, depending on how many kids you've got. But this is where the fairness comes in. And I want to say this again. Fairness is emotional. So in order for your partner to carry more, they have to feel seen, appreciated, and prioritized. Because if they feel invisible, they can't carry that. They can't carry that load. So here's the real question. Does the overloaded partner actually feel valued? Does the limited partner feel respected? If the answer is no on either side, that's where your resentment starts. So let me give you a couple of common patterns that I see. The traveling spouse comes home and collapses. I need a day. I need 2 days just to recover. I need a couple of days just to get back into the groove of things. So, just keep handling it. Just keep holding down the fort, babe. From their perspective, they're exhausted. Completely understandable. And also, the signal that's received is that your exhaustion counts, but mine doesn't. And now the at-home spouse stops asking for help because they think, if I have to ask, it's not even worth it. It doesn't count. So they start over-functioning, and over-functioning breeds quiet superiority. It also, that over-functioning, screws up the polarity in your marriage because the at-home spouse is now in their masculine energy where it doesn't feel completely natural, and you can't have two alphas in the same pride or it's going to lead to some massive fighting. So this is what happens. They've taken over that masculine role because you haven't stepped up to fulfill that if you're the husband and you're the one that's on the road. For men, it's the opposite. That they've been in their masculine, but they've also had to fulfill too many feminine roles at home, the nurturing, the receiving, all of that is feminine. And so they've done too much of that. And now they're stuck there while you're in your masculine as a woman. It doesn't work. The polarity is flipped. The superiority is what kills intimacy. The lack of polarity also kills intimacy. The sick or limited spouse withdraws emotionally. They feel shame. They feel like a burden. So they stop initiating the connection. Now, both people feel alone. And it's not malicious, but the system is misfiring. So it's understanding where that misfire is. And this is why I have this podcast, is so that couples out there can get the real help, so that they can recognize themselves in the episodes that I'm recording for you and say, oh, yep, okay, this is exactly what's happening. And then they can help themselves. So here's how you fix it. And we're going to get very practical because that's what we do here. So the first thing I want you to do is to redefine contribution. Contribution is not measured in hours. It is measured in intentional impact. So if you are the spouse who travels, your job is not just income. That is what you do. It is not who you are. Your job is emotional reassurance. Now, I just had a conversation this morning on Voxer with an older client that worked with me a couple of years ago. And she gets on and she says, what do I do if I am continuing to give and give and give in kindness and compassion and love and care and respect and all the things, and I'm not getting that in return? How long do I do that? Well, here is my answer. You're not doing those things to get something in return. You're doing those things because that's who you are. Living with integrity, kindness, compassion, love, respect, honor, loyalty, care. All of those words are characteristics of people who are sober-minded. If you are level-headed and you are emotionally sober, you are doing those irregardless of whether your partner is doing those or not. They could be the biggest jerk on the planet, the most disrespectful, hateful, self-righteous people that you've ever seen. And that doesn't change how you show up because you're in control of your responses while they are responsible for themselves. So just because they're hateful doesn't mean you have to be. It's the age-old adage of 2 wrongs don't make a right. So as long as your side of the street is clean, that's where you stay. And you do it because that's what's right and that's who you are, not so that you can get something out of it. Because if you're doing something to get something out of it, now you're manipulating and you're not living with integrity. You're not living into who you truly are. Now, if you are the spouse who travels, your job is not just income. Your job is emotional reassurance. So what that looks like is proactive appreciation, not generic. We're not speaking in generics anymore. We're being specific. Hey, I know that you handled 3 meltdowns today and still made dinner. I just want you to know that I see you. I see you and I appreciate you. Schedule relief before you leave. Not let me know if you need anything. Instead, hey, Saturday morning is yours. Go have coffee, go have brunch with the girls, go get your nails done, whatever you need to do. I've got it. I have got everything. And you actually live into and have everything without asking for lists, without asking for routines, without asking for, what time does the baby need a bottle? You need to know those things because you are a parent too. Okay. Next one is owning invisible labor remotely. So you handle school emails while you're waiting in the hotel. You book appointments while you're waiting. You manage finances in the 4-hour time block that you've got off. When you've got your 32-hour layover or whatever it is, handle the things that you can handle. Pay the bills, do the taxes, all the things from wherever you are. That communicates partnership even when you're gone. If you are the spouse at home, stop expecting mind reading. This is a huge one. A lot of assumptions are made in marriages, and that is where marriages go awry. Assumptions and mind reading. You have to communicate with your spouse. So instead of, you don't need help, say, hey, when you come home and go straight to the couch, I interpret that as that my work doesn't matter. Can we create a different reentry plan here? A different reintegration to when you come home? Specific requests create change. Vague resentment creates distance. Big difference. Number 2, I want you to create reentry rituals. Transitions matter more than totals, and this is for children and for adults. When the traveling spouse walks in, the first 30 minutes set the tone. Research on attachment shows that consistent reunion rituals increase relationship security. So this may look like a 10-minute uninterrupted reconnection time. It may look like a 6-second kiss followed by they go get a shower and put away their bags and all the things. And then they are right back in it with you. They are helping making dinner, doing the homework, picking up the toys, whatever. So let's say we do that. And then it's that immediate active takeover of parenting. It may look like physical affection before any logistics talk. Small intentional resets prevent that emotional drift. Number 3, I want you to address the long-term imbalance honestly. If this is chronic illness, depression, or a permanent schedule demand, you have to stop pretending that it's temporary. It's not. Temporary language prevents strategic solutions. So a long-term imbalance requires budgeting for relief, outsourcing wherever you can. And this is one of the things that I see frequently, especially with aviation, is the stay-at-home parent is saying, I need a mother's helper. I need a housekeeper. I need a chef, something there. And the person who is responsible for bringing in the money is saying, oh yeah, absolutely not. We're not spending money on that. Well, friend, I hate to tell you this, but if your partner is saying that this is what they need, you need to be able to provide that. Because for you, it's monetary, it's financial. You're shelling out money. For them, they're shelling out their mental health. They're shelling out every piece of themselves and saying, I can't do this anymore. I am drowning. Here is the lifeline that I need. I am giving you the example. I am giving you exactly what I need. And if they are told no, that is where the resentment comes in. That is where the emotional drawback comes. And that is where the marriage starts to crumble quickly. It may look like expanding support networks that you have to commute because I can't take care of these 5 kids without family support. It may look like therapy or coaching for grief processing. I've helped a lot of couples through that, a lot of individuals as well. And most importantly, the limited spouse has to contribute emotionally. Illness explains limits. It does not excuse disengagement. You can be physically limited and emotionally present. That might look like planning a date night from bed. It might look like writing appreciation notes, managing bills. It might look like handling school forms, being the emotional anchor, even if you can't cook dinner. Contribution shifts, but it does not disappear. And here is the hardest part. Mindset. Always mindset. It always goes back to the mindset. If you frame your season as, I'm stuck doing this alone, it's never going to get better, everything's hopeless, I don't need help, we don't need help, I'm not going to therapy, I'm not going to coaching, we're not spending money on that, your body or your partner's body, one of you, is going to live in chronic threat mode. If you frame it as, we're navigating this as a team, what do you need? Here's what I need. Now your nervous system is softening. When you view it as a same workload, that you and your partner have a mission for your marriage, and your roles in that mission may look different, but they're both equally as important. Now we have a different interpretation, different emotional outcome. Mindset doesn't remove reality. It determines whether you feel abandoned inside that reality or not. And here's what I want you to remember. In healthy marriages, imbalance is normal. It's not always going to be 50-50. And I don't even know why they say that divorce is 50-50, because it's not. It is not. But indifference is fatal. When you have that imbalance, completely normal. But the indifference is what's fatal. If both partners are trying, even imperfectly, because, hello, we're humans, connection can grow. I would even argue that connection can grow even better in hard seasons than in easier ones. If one person is checked out emotionally, though, no amount of chore redistribution is going to save it. So here's the question I want you to sit with. Are we acting like opponents keeping score, or teammates adjusting strategy? That's going to be the shift that changes everything. The next question I want you to ask is, if our marriage was easy, what would we be doing different? If our marriage felt easy, what would we be doing different? If this episode feels like your marriage, don't weaponize it. Share it and say, I don't want us to drift. I want us to feel like a team again. That conversation, handled gently, is where the repair begins. And repair is always possible when both people are willing. Always. I hope this episode has helped you. If it has, please share it with other friends or family or even your spouse that may need this as well. And until next week, stay married and connected. This podcast is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional counseling or therapy. Every couple story is unique, so take what's helpful and leave the rest. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge that neither I, Cameron Thompson Alaricki, Married and Connected, or Recognizing Potential Coaching are responsible for any outcomes related to what you apply from this show, especially if you are not a client of mine.